on to this very important story. So a Canada Post strike continues to loom over us. Negotiations seem to have stalled and workers are refusing overtime. According to their annual report, the last time Canada Post made money was back in 2017. So what do they need to do to adapt to changes in our society? Who wants to take this one on?
Anybody here work for Canada Post? I'm just curious. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay. I mean, listen, nobody wants to see anybody lose jobs, but you also don't want to see what we saw happen with the Hudson's Bay, which is the entire company shuts down. So they got to figure out something. And you know, there is such a massive change in how we shop, in how we get mail delivery, and who's getting the mail delivery. So there has to be something drastic, and I don't know how you do that when you're at the same time trying to protect a lot of jobs. But I do say, you know, there's things that are not realistic. I was reading, because, you know, as one does, you read the collective agreement of the unions with Canada Post, and there was a clause in there that just blew me away, which is basically, you are basically guaranteed a job for life. That doesn't sound realistic in 2025. No. And, you know, I would wish that for all of us. It's just not realistic. Not only have they not made money since 2017, they have lost $3 billion since then. Yep. They just got $1 billion loan from the federal government this past January, and their own people have said, we're going to need $1 billion a year just to stay afloat. Now, guess whose money that is? That's our money.
And how do we feel about that?
You know, that's where it gets really, really hard.
What if? Okay, you bring out some wonderful stats. It's very, very interesting. But I wonder if it's incumbent upon us to shift the way we think about Canada Post. You referred to it as a business, but I think of it more as this vital public service. The idea like a library, the idea like a fire department, the idea of like road maintenance. You know, we don't expect our roads to make money, but we all use them. And that's exactly why Canada Post is a crown corporation, meaning they're not supposed to be thinking about shareholders and how much money they make. They're not actually even thinking about profit. Do you know what I mean?
Well, they were covering themselves too. They wasn't necessarily, the taxpayer wasn't on the hook for this for a long period of time. They were somewhat profitable for years. But then again, in 2017 was the last time they made a profit, and since then they've lost $3 billion, as you mentioned. And I think the thing is that what is left that Canada Post is doing? Well, first of all, it's servicing like rural areas, right? Where,
Can't forget about them.
I think it's necessary. People with disabilities, people who are elderly, people who still love to send a card every once in a while. And Canada Post doesn't allow anybody else to send those types of things. With packages, they can't compete. Obviously, our interest in getting packages has skyrocketed in the last decade or so. And unfortunately, Canada Post doesn't work on the weekends as part of the protected union thing. So what I think is that about all the systems that are government-based still rely on Canada Post. Things like our Canada Revenue Agency thing.
Election notices.
Things that are like of sensitive nature, like WSIB I know uses this. I'm sure in penitentiaries they use mail. You're not gonna have a governmental hack in the same way, I think, when you're still using snail mail. So maybe we need to lean into some of these older services in order to...
But do you need the same size workforce?
I don't know that someone's got a noodle that's smarter than my noodle.
So you think the answer is downsizing instead of instead of eliminating altogether? Make it more efficient.
I think what they're trying to say, Canada Post is saying, yes, fewer people are sending out a letter. Anyone also know the price of a stamp right now in Canada?
It's over $1. I know that.
Yeah, it's interesting though, like that says how few letters were sent.
I was gonna say 45 cents, show my age.
Yeah, see?
Damn.
But they're recognizing that something needs to change, and they are recognizing that it probably has to do with packages. What they're saying, and which I think is admirable, is they don't want to so, quote unquote, gigify these new jobs that they're creating, so that you're hiring employees who work spotty hours, maybe 6 hours one week, 40 the next week, and who don't have any benefits.
We don't want that as a society.
None of us want that.
I think it's really admirable what they're doing.
But here's the thing, I think it's time to pivot. They are going up against some big competition. There are huge companies that are in this space. You know, you maybe have to get creative. You've got to keep servicing the rural communities that don't have this. So maybe instead of just, I don't know, having a community postal store, maybe you also team up with a big bank, and you have banking and postal office in a spot. You got to start thinking outside the box. Shopify is one of Canada's most amazing online digital shop stores.
But those are privatized.
No. But what I'm saying is you can get into a deal. What if Shopify, great Canadian company, gets into bed with Canada Post and they become the exclusive shipper
I don't
for
like
the
it.
biggest company in the world?
Crown corporation.
What if they hear this idea and they steal it?
Yeah, well, maybe. I just think they have to be nimble.
I totally agree, but there are so many countries whose postal systems are subsidized, like Japan, like Norway, like France, and
They
I
don't
think
have the geography we have.
that's true, but I think the geography means that we need it even more, because for right now, for $1.44, it costs the same amount of money to mail a letter from one coast to the other, and I think that's incredible. That's a subsidy that I'm happy to
I get it, but that's not where. But the trend line is not showing more letters. The trend line is less and less and less letters.
Yeah.
So the end is near if
And
they
they
don't
see
fix
that.
it.
They see that, and they're like, let's move into the packages, but we don't want to rip off employees. We want to treat employees fairly
I think
instead of this
both.
gig economy.
No, I'm not saying rip off. Of course, we want to protect employee and workers' rights, but you have to do that against stiff competition. Amazon is wiping out everybody. How does anybody compete? You got to get nimble and smart. With people much smarter than us,
But then
obviously.
again, I'm just going to say this
Yeah.
one more time. Is that the systems then need to change as well, because the government isn't ready to make all these shifts. Yeah. They still require people with a pen and a piece of paper to fill out certain sensitive forms and send them in the mail.
Yeah.
So until that system is up to snuff, you need Canada Post and you need these workers' rights protected. It's like they all go hand in hand. You can't just flip a switch and
So
then
are
fix
you
that.
okay that the government, Canada Post has said they need $1 billion a year to stay afloat. They are insolvent. They are not a viable business.
Yes.
Are you okay giving them $1 billion a year to
What I'm
stay
saying is
afloat?
that right now the government needs to be working on fixing these systems so that they can go in hand and make adjustments together going forward. They can't go with the other.
And you asked a really interesting question, and we do have an audience in front of us. How do you guys feel about spending $1 billion a year to keep Canada Post running? How do you feel? Just check the temperature in the room. You're
Wow!
It's half and half.
Half and half.
Half and half.
Yeah, it's
Very
half and
interesting.
Disagreed with me about lyrics, but all on workers' rights here.
Well, Jess, that's what you do. Bring people together.
Let's meet up after the show for a drink.
Let's be clear. Let's be clear. We support workers and we support workers' rights. We want people to keep jobs. We don't want Canada Post to shut down. We got to figure it out.
We gotta figure it out.
We got to figure it out.
Hey, you, come a bit closer. We've got so many more must-see interviews, spicy debates, lifestyle tips, and pop culture moments. So subscribe to our channel by tapping the logo below and don't miss out.